Hello, this is Kate Stillman with the Thrive with Kate podcast, and I'm here with Ron Penvey. And Ron has done a lot of work on conscious aging and conscious eldering. And I'm excited to really have a deep dive with you about your book, about this whole mass of people that's moving into the elder years, and really where some of the growth opportunities are for all generations as we have an aging, eldering population. So can we just start with what brought you into writing the book?
Well, what brought me into writing the book, Kate, is that, well, actually, I've been offering conscious eldering retreats for many years through my Center for Conscious Eldering. And I have done a lot of writing, a lot of articles on conscious eldering and the possibilities, the opportunities, and the kind, what I call the inner work of conscious eldering, the inner work that helps people to bring forth the elder within. I've been doing a whole lot of that and, getting known for that. And one day back in 2012, from out of the blue, I get a call from Beyond Words Publishing, and they tell me that they wanted to write a book on conscious aging because they were aware that there was a new paradigm beginning to emerge, an empowering paradigm for aging in today's society, and they wanted to do a book on that, and they asked me if I would write a book for them. And if any of your listeners know anything about the book world, it's usually the poor author over there struggling, pulling his or her hair out, wondering how they're going to get published. And so when this happened, it really told me that, hey, it is time for me to get past my doubts and my fears and to put a lot of what I knew and what I have been teaching for so long and writing articles about, to put it into the form of a book. And so my book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, came out in 2014. And then 10 years later, my publisher and I decided that a new edition with several new chapters would really be appropriate, especially since in these times we're in now, the role of elder may be even more important and more critical than it was when the book first came out in 2014. And so the new chapters that I've written in the new edition really do speak to the role of elder in today's world and as to how we can best give our gifts as elders to a world that needs us.
Yeah, amen. So if we look at population and wealth, right? The elders hold over 50% of the wealth, the global wealth. And
Yes.
and this is impacting a lot of generations, right? Because when we look in the past, this wasn't as true, where we had more leaders at different age groups, and now there's a lot of power and a lot of wealth that's being almost in a static state of, it's like a hold of value rather than recycling within populations and within different generations, right? And we see this with octarian presidents. We see this with the amount of wealth that's tied up in real estate and trust that in many ways is prohibiting millennials and Gen Z from reproducing, right? So from us actually like passing the legacy of our DNA forward. And I know it's not intentional. It's not like there's someone behind the scenes like pulling the strings here, but it's a reality in a lot of families, right? And so I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, you're so in this world, and I have so many questions. But to me, this is such a nut to crack that we have wealth tied up in store of value that's keeping younger generations potentially from feeling like they have the capacity, enough wealth to be able to reproduce. And then we also have this wisdom that's stored in these in like the boomer plus age groups that isn't necessarily filtering down, and there's a lot of disruption in families where kids aren't speaking to their parents, et cetera, as part of the whole victim culture. So I just want to unleash the can of worms for you to talk about whatever your thinking and experience and mentoring is in these topics.
Well, the older generation now, besides having a lot of accumulated wealth, and that is painting with the broadest picture,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of older adults who do not have wealth.
Yes.
It's really skewed by those who have a lot of wealth. But besides having, generationally speaking, a lot of financial wealth, we live in a world now, Kate, as you definitely know, that we have access, all of us of any age, and certainly those of us who are in our elder chapters, have access to the wealth of all the world's wisdom traditions. I mean, how many people before, just in the last 10, 20, 30 years, had this kind of incredible access? And so we have access to so much the wisdom traditions of the world that know about the role of elder, that know about growth, know about transformation, that we can tap into, so that as we age, we can use this wisdom for growth and to help us to know how we can best serve, so that we can not just be taking, but so that we can be giving. We can be giving from our store of financial wealth if we have it, but maybe even more important, we can be giving from the wisdom and the experience and the skills that we've accumulated over a lifetime, so that we can make a difference in a world that definitely needs us to do something other than just retire from life when we reach a certain age and we decide, okay, it's retirement age.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole retirement paradigm seems fairly toxic.
And it's changing. It's changing in a big way. The word retirement now, if you take 10 or 20 or 30 people and you ask let's say who are 60 years old or so, and you ask them, what does retirement mean to you? And you're probably going to get 5 or 10 or more different definitions of retirement, of what that means. It was clear when my dad retired, many years ago, back in 1980 or something like that. It was clear what retirement meant. It was clear that retirement meant you didn't have to work anymore. When my dad retired, actuarially, maybe he had 4 or 5 more years. He worked himself to the bone in a steel mill. He was tired and he was worn out. And to be able to just relax was very appealing and very viable.
Yeah.
But now, my God, people reach so-called retirement age, and there's a good chance they're going to have 20, 25, maybe 30 more years. And what do you do with that time? That gift that we've been blessed with, what do we do with that? And how do we stay healthy and vibrant during that time? And those are the kind of things that, excuse me, I think a new paradigm like conscious eldering is about. Showing us that this is a precious time, a precious opportunity. We've got tons of different resources. And this is a time for us to really reach maybe the pinnacle of who we can be in terms of our development, our personal development, our spiritual development, our emotional development. We need this kind of a paradigm so people see that there's some alternatives. And that's what my work and others like me is about, to show that there is another way of viewing our aging.
And so what are in terms of the actual skills that happen on these retreats and these experiences that you're guiding elders into elderhood, like what can you go through some of the skill building?
Yeah, I can. I think the first thing I need to say is that our Choosing Conscious Elderhood retreats, and that's our signature retreat, and they're a week long, and they are a very immersive experience of conscious eldering. And when I envisioned my book and the way I wrote my book, I wrote it so that it really could be almost like a guidebook to help people move through transition in the same way that our retreats are intended to. There are various dynamics that people throughout history, societies have known, are the dynamics that comprise the process of transition from one life stage to another. And so what we teach is how to negotiate these dynamics so that you can indeed move from the life stage of what I call midlife adulthood and gradually move into elderhood, which is a distinct life stage in the life of the psyche. Even our society doesn't recognize much about this life stage, but it is a life stage. And so we focus in the retreats, we focus in my book on we spend the first part of the book and the first part of the retreats focusing on the first major dynamic in any major life transition, and that's taking a look at your life up to now, where I have come from, who I have become, what are those things that may have served me in the past, but I can't carry with me. We can't take everything with us as we move from one stage to another. We need to let things go. So what do we need to let go? What do we need to heal? So we're not carrying a bunch of baggage as we're trying to move into a future. And so we focus on life review. We focus on forgiveness. We focus on looking at the story that we carry in our psyche of what we tell ourselves about what our life has been. And we look at how can that possibly be rewritten in a way where we can look at our life as a process of growth, rather than many of us hang on to old stories about, oh, I'm unworthy, I'm a victim, I've screwed up, whatever. So we focus on that, as well as what are those gifts that it's important for us to carry forward with us. And you only do this by really taking a look at your life, seeing what the gifts are that have been there, and knowing that they're going to be there for you in the future. And then the second phase of transition of our retreats of the book really focuses on that in-between time that's oftentimes called the neutral zone, sometimes called liminal space, sometimes called the fertile void. But it's a time in any major transition when you're not who you have been, something has changed, you don't know who you're becoming yet, and you're in between, and it can be a time that feels empty, feels kind of lost. But to use the metaphor of the cocoon and the butterfly, it's that time when we are in the chrysalis or the cocoon, and we are waiting to see what wants to emerge as the old caterpillar gradually dies and some kind of a new butterfly wants to be born. And there are all kinds of practices and ways of being that we can use this neutral zone time well. And what doesn't serve us well is to try to hang on to a past that really isn't alive anymore, or to desperately grasp at a future so we have something to hold on to, even when it's not feeling authentic. We know we're just grasping.
Yeah.
And I would just very briefly say that the number one thing we can do if we find ourselves in this neutral zone time is quiet down, quiet our minds, quiet our lives, spend time in the natural world, and allow the seeds of new beginnings and the visions for what's possible in the next stage to slowly but surely start to show themselves. And then the third stage of transition, and this is the last part of our retreats and the last chapters of my book, are how we take, as we start to become aware of seeds of possibility, how we take those and manifest them into the world, how we turn them into a sense of purpose, how we live in the elder stage, and how we use those gifts and how we make a difference and how we find fulfillment in the elder stage. And so those are the kind of practices that my book and our retreats and conscious eldering is very much about. In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Very nutshell.
Yeah, I'm gonna share with you. It's parallel to so many parallels to what we do in Club Thrive. So this is my online club. It's an annual membership, and in the cores, the 6 cores, we really start with this fractal of like who this person has been, who they're becoming next, and then what are the 80%, like the 80/20, what are like the releases of past stages and past identities, and in that getting quiet to get the vision. We also go into growth path and depth path as two different, like the inner world versus the outer world achievements or experiences or initiations. And then out of this and out of like the rhythm, you're talking about getting quiet, and we bring people deep into circadian rhythm, into a vision of their future and identity, whether they're on a depth path or a growth path next. Then through healing and healing crises, through primal habits, and then strategy to the future you. So it's really refreshing for me to hear, because we get a lot of, I call them like the grandmas. We get a lot of grandmas in Club Thrive, not just grandmas, but like we're intergenerational. But for that phase, that transition into like, who am I? Who am I next? And how much does legacy play in? And we find it's a lot. And it's in this process of self-reinvention and the invitation to do that deep dive analysis of naming their past identities, like you said, like rewriting. We do a lot of rewriting memories to work for the future self. And in that process, there's often or always the necessary not knowing, the beginner's mind, right? Of where it's like, and that's often in the healing crisis where the body often will have like a physiological release that could look scary, if we don't know what it is.
Yes, it can.
But repositioning it, like the body's shedding a layer that is the butterfly, it is the chrysalis, right? That there's this snake shedding its skin, the body will shed also its past identities, which can be mapped all the way through the microbiome as a specific population, right? Of like, this is what the microbiome population is at this identity, and this is what it's at a more evolved identity. So it's cool for me to see how parallel, like when we get to similar outcomes or processes from really different journeys here.
Yeah, we're talking using different language, but they're the same basic understandings. And there are a lot of others like us too.
Yeah.
And so this whole vision of what aging can be is slowly but surely starting to change. And I think that is so refreshing. But I would imagine, and I don't know your work other than what you just shared with me now, but I would imagine that you are like me and many others of us who recognize that these added years, that we have the potential for, aren't just a time to be able to do more or to keep doing like we've been doing for most of our lives, but they're also a time to focus on our being. What kind of a person can we become in our elder chapters? Especially, as is inevitably the case, no matter how well we eat and take care of our microbiome and whatever, the fact is that most of our bodies eventually are going to start losing abilities. And as we do so, then how do we find meaning, and how do we find purpose, and how do we find growth? What kind of a person do we want to be in these last precious chapters? And so that, I think, is what distinguishes my work, and I get a sense your work, from a lot of the positive aging stuff out there that seems to be focused more on just how can I keep doing what I've been doing as long as I possibly can keep doing.
Yeah.
It's a shift that I think is really an important shift, and there are a lot of us helping people to see the potentials of that shift. And I'm glad to hear about what you're doing, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, my background's in Ayurvedic medicine, and there's very distinct stages of life and opportunities in those stages, right? So that's like
yes, there are
intact wisdom tradition. And so that cultivation of the lighter, more subtle energies that happen, whether it's post-menopause for women, usually like post-retirement for men, or when it's harder to put on muscle, right? Like if we just define it by when it's starts to get very challenging to put on more muscle tissue as that entrance into the subtler energies. And within cultivation of the subtler energies is the cultivation of different levels of consciousness that
Yes.
are much harder to access when there's literally more physical matter, like more material body, and that those subtler accesses, initiations like dikshas into consciousness levels that are largely unifying consciousnesses, there's an ability to tap into what future generations need from us right now. Right? And then it just goes, it weaves naturally into the subtle essence of legacy. And I'm sensing so much in what, in what we really need from our elders to be filtering into younger generations. There's a lot of opportunity and critical challenges to overcome. So I'm curious at what you found in your community, whether there's stories of how people have navigated this well or opportunities people have stepped into.
Yeah, that's right. And I oftentimes have heard people say, well, you older adults need to get out of the way, quit working so that the younger people can have opportunities for jobs. And I think maybe this harkens back to what you started this conversation with. But the way I see it, the goal isn't so much to hang on to our jobs longer and longer. But our goal is to recognize that retirement really is an opportunity when we can perhaps let go of the jobs we have been doing and the career focus we've had for a long time, and begin to, on the one hand, have more time for cultivating our inner life and for allowing ourselves just to relax a bit. And on the other hand, finding ways to use the gifts that we've been given that have hopefully found some expression throughout our careers, find other ways to use those gifts now that don't have to involve a full-time career or a full-time job. But those gifts, we were born with them. We're going to die with them. We don't want them to just wither in our final years. So finding ways in this stage of life after retirement to give those gifts to make a difference in the world. And that's what elders can do, I think, without taking jobs from the younger people or whatever, but making our distinct contribution, as elders have always done in cultures throughout history. There's always been a role. And there's a need now for a role.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to share any stories of what members of yours have done after the retreats or time with you?
Oh, God, I could share a million. I'll share a couple that come to mind.
Yeah, that'd be great.
One is a story of a dear friend a friend named Bob, who had a long and successful career as a psychotherapist. And the time came when, because of some health considerations and he pushed himself so hard running this psychotherapy organization, he just needed to let all of that go. And he let it go. But what happened was that a talent that he had and been aware of throughout his life, but found little time for expression, and that is writing poetry, it all of a sudden began to emerge. And so he found this poet in him that had remained dormant, was now writing beautiful poetry that inspires others, poetry that really relates to the human heart's relationship to the natural world. He's put it together in a couple of books. And so he's blossoming in this way. Or one other example, I think of my wife, who was a social worker working on behalf of child welfare for many years, an incredibly stressful career. She did a lot of counseling, a lot of social work, worked with very difficult family situations. And she got very, very burned out from that. And she was in a lot of toxic situations, Kate. She had to let that all go when she got to, I don't know, about 64, 65 or something like that. And she spent 3 or 4 years just decompressing, taking care of herself, and nurturing a growing passion for quilting. And oh my, she is so creative, the quilting thing she does. But she found that, well, as fulfilling as the quilting was, something was missing. She knew that she had a gift for touching and helping to provide a healing, excuse me, a healing atmosphere for others. And so she decided to begin doing some part-time counseling. You know, with the pandemic, all of a sudden you have Zoom and these platforms, and counseling can happen that way. And so now she counsels people in much less toxic situations, but she brings her special gift to people, a few clients a week, and she does a lot of quilting, and she focuses a lot more on her inner life than she had time for before. And so she found a beautiful, beautiful new balance, and she's able to bring forth the quilting gift and a new aspect of her counseling gift. And it's really beautiful what she has found in her retirement years. And, you know, there are many, many, many stories like that. But I think the main thing is that the kind of people who've come on our retreats or who are attracted to my work, and I'll bet your work, are people who really, really want to be giving their gifts in their elder years. Are just looking for a way. How can I do this? How can I live with purpose and also have time for deepening my inner life? And that's the opportunity that retirement can provide if we choose to use it for that.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that, like deep dive into self-care sabbatical, like that transitional phase, which I think is so important to normalize, that there's a retreat inward. In the Vedic tradition, there's a not very well-known practice called Kaya Kalpa, which was when the elders basically, I don't know, are you familiar with it? Kaya
No,
Kalpa?
I'm not familiar with that practice.
It's pretty wild. So the elders in transition into elderhood, so it was like a gateway practice, would go underground. So it was a dugout, like underground, away from the light for up to 6 months, and they would be served in this dugout, and it was it's like going back into the womb of the earth.
Wow.
Into darkness, and they'd just be in darkness, and the stories are fascinating. I mean, this is, pretty advanced yogis and the forest dweller, like the ones who are going into monkhood type of a transition from householder, or going from householder to monk.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if this was the forest dweller tradition is the same thing, but you go to the forest instead of a dark cave for 6
Yeah, and this is really specific for regeneration. So it's like the hair would go from white to dark again. There's even stories of teeth regenerate, just like beyond normal regeneration. But from that, if we just take the analogy or the metaphor of transition, of changing, I love even in part of like how you parent kids under the age of 6, it's like if they're having a hard time, you change the room, right? You architect the environment for you, like you just change the situation, right? So it's like you literally leave the room, you leave the house, you go into a cave-like experience, you go into the dark, into the unknown, into away from culture, into primal nature, and in that the self regenerates into the next phase.
Yeah,
and then you emerge.
I'm beautiful, and I would imagine among those listening to this, most of them are not in a position, not able to go into the cave or into the forest for that long.
Yeah.
But we are able to create the same kind of an inner environment where those kind of things can happen. But for one thing, it requires disconnecting from having to constantly be in touch with everything going on and being aware of every single mostly ugly bit of news around us and everything. Involves getting quiet, involves cultivating our inner life. It involves opening to the spirit within that perhaps we haven't had time or made time to do. It involves spending time in primal nature, as you talk about. We can all build those kind of things into our lives. And in so doing, we can accomplish a lot of the kind of growth that you and I are both talking about and teaching about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping like one of the things listeners pick up is that it's like an inevitability, right? Like I was being interviewed this morning by someone who's doing this meditation summit, and he was like, "What kind of meditation do you practice?" And I'm like, "Just sitting." Just actually sitting and being, and it's like this inevitability of allowing these transitions, right? If we just allow for the transition and the unplugging and that following that current, that thread, right, inward, that it goes somewhere, that trust, and that there's a real heeding of the call, and that it goes somewhere that if we don't follow it, we don't end up in the same place. Like if we just stay in the culture and we stay in the perpetuation of the past identity of maybe the pre-retired identity, or the one who's trying to fight aging, right, rather than the like, what's my body going to be like in the next stage? Like, what am I good at in the next phase? Like, what am I letting go of?
Yeah. And that's why there's so many older people in today's world who really have not grown into elderhood at all. And in fact, that's why there's so many, I believe, older and even midlife people who have never, in the world of the psyche, grown out of adolescence or childhood.
Yeah.
And part of that is that our society hasn't provided any meaningful rites of passage to help them grow from one stage to another.
Yeah. How would someone identify, I just think of people in my life, some of the elders in my life who would just be like, oh, that's not me, when it is. So what might be some ways of identifying, or in a maybe a gentle way for someone to self-identify if they have some rites of passages to maybe embrace or catch up on?
Well, I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, Kate, the wonderful thing is that even if throughout our lives we have not had opportunities or been aware of ways to grow ourselves, to grow our psyches into other stages, with conscious intent, a lot of that work can be done in a relatively short time. And that's why I think a lot of the kinds of work that you are teaching, the kind of things that my book is about, the kind of practices I call the inner work of conscious eldering, they can really help us in a relatively short time to all of a sudden open up a whole lot of things in our psyche and move forward.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the way I view elder, it isn't that you cross some line one day and all of a sudden, oh boy, I can put on my elder badge, I'm now an elder. In fact, I view it more, and that's why I call my work conscious eldering. I really view it as a process for slowly but surely unfolding certain of those elder qualities in us. And the more and more of those are unfolded and start to manifest in the world, then the more and more we are seen by others as elders, and the more and more we can legitimately feel, yes, I'm really beginning to feel like an elder. And so a lot of this inner work that I teach, and I imagine things you teach, is designed to just unfold more and more of these qualities.
Yeah.
And most of us, maybe are never going to reach the full potential of elderhood. But we could bring forth a whole lot of that, enough that people around us see us and people know it. People just, I'm sure you have met true elders, and they got a light that shines, and you just want to be around them, even if they've lost all kinds of physical and other abilities. There's something about them that people recognize, And that's the goal. And I think it's so important for all of us who aspire to this way of living to identify some people in our own lives or people we know of or who are aware of that really strike us as somebody who have really grown into a beautiful elderhood. Identify them, see what we could learn about them, see what qualities they manifest, see what we can do to aspire to live like they have lived. Learn from these wonderful models. And I think at the same time, we can look at people, and we all know people we think have aged really, really poorly. And I'm not just talking about physical, I'm talking about everything. And we could look at them and say, hey, that's not how I want to age. What are those things I need to avoid? What are those things that they're obviously not attending to that I can attend to? So that I could age more like the elders I aspired to be like, and less like those people that are really aging poorly.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that so relationally, right? Like who's embodying the relational, intergenerational connection, and how are they doing that? What are they doing? Because then there's habits, right? There's like habits behind practices, behind behaviors, behind identity, right? It's the habits that create the identity. And often we don't think of it that way. We're just like, oh, they're just like that. But it's like, well, what are they doing? We can look at that. How do they start their day? Who do they talk to? Who do they message? How do they connect with community? So what are you seeing in terms of, because I'm guessing, like usually what I find with my interests and the themes that are around my work is that I'm a bit of a futurist, but usually it means that it's coming into the mainstream, right? And so I'm curious what you're seeing with this conscious eldering entering communities, like what it's looking like on grassroots, like what it's looking like in terms of just get-togethers or circles or workshops, or like you're doing retreats. Like what are you noticing? What are you seeing? Because I'm guessing that when someone goes to one of your retreats, and I want to, now that I'm on your website, I want to send my mom. She's turning 80 this year. So I'm going to try to send my mom to one of your events in Abiquiu, New Mexico. But I'm guessing people leave inspired, and partly they leave inspired to have some sort of a circle or some sort of a way of bringing elders into community and elders together in their depth and growth and identity evolutions. But I'm curious what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that, one of the gifts of the kinds of retreats we do is that people have a living experience of what it's like to be with another group of people who have open hearts and open minds, and who are committed to allowing spirit to be present to support the work that they're doing. And when you've experienced that, the thought of going back to a quote-unquote normal life without any of that can be painful. Yeah. And it can be hard as hell to hold on to it. Yeah. It's one thing to go to a retreat and get high.
Yeah.
But that's not the purpose of the kind of work that we do and that you do. It's not to go and have a temporary high. Yeah. And so people recognize that, hey, we need to find others that we can join with in community. And so it so often happens that the people on our retreats decide to self-organize and get together and meet once a month on Zoom or something like that, and continue some of the deep explorations that we did on the retreat. Or some of these people in their own communities get together, they sound out a call, at the local senior center or with their local groups of friends or whatever. They say, hey, I would like to get together with others to talk about how we can talk about how we can age really well, and who might be interested in getting together. And what has happened many times is that they have started book study groups, sometimes using my book, sometimes some of the other, great materials out there, and they all agree that we're going to use this particular book, and we're going to discuss it and engage in the practices and things like that.
Yeah.
But I said that the one other thing I would really stress is that there is something I'm seeing happening more and more, Kate, in this whole conscious eldering sphere, if you will, is people recognizing that if we're going to be and live like and act like true elders, we can't do it only hanging out with people our own age.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole move toward intergenerationality and toward older adults, those who want to identify as elders, finding ways to meet younger people. Sometimes maybe, there's a lot of a cultural gap there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of stepping out of our comfort zone to do it. But to find ways to have meaningful relationships with younger people, whether it's in schools, being a foster grandparent or something, or, heck, I know a couple of instances of where elders and younger people in their teens have decided to get together and interview each other and do oral history with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take long to break down the barriers.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't take long, for instance, if we took a little bit of effort for some of us elders to get together with some youngers and go to things like demonstrations, protests, social action together.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that, we have community, and we're fulfilling the time-honored role of the elder, having a meaningful mentoring relationship with the younger, while also understanding that we can learn from the younger. It's not one way, it's a two-way mentoring. And that is a real trend that I see happening more and more now among people who are committed to conscious aging, intergenerationality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I just want to tie it back to my initial, this sort of provocation around wealth. Because one of the things that I'm seeing is how do we move that store of value intergenerationally, in a way that causes all to rise up, causes all to steward. And there's so much benefit in U.S. tax law around family companies that I believe people should take advantage of, because it's built into our tax code that we see the value in that, and beyond just a trust, beyond a store of value, how do we actually activate the energy into economy, into value, into exchange of value, not just store of value? And what can that even look like? I was having a conversation with my dad about my brother, and I was just he just needs access to cash flow. That's easy for you to unlock. It's a transference of value now instead of later, and not even a lot, but it changes his life. And just ways of thinking things through that can impact, beyond the, and it's not at all to undermine the spiritual or the creative, but to actually unlock store of value into exchange of value for younger generations that need this value unlocked because they're being hindered. They can't own their own homes. It's hard to make ends meet. Two parents need to work. There's still not enough money to have babies. There's real issues here that we need the boomer pluses to start to lean in and get very activated in my opinion, in terms of leaving their own legacy, their own future generations as well off as they can. And not just in terms of financially, but in terms of quality of life.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Kate. And there's another dimension I would add to what you just shared. One reason there seems to be such a big gap between youngers and older adults is that so many youngers, starting at a very young age, see so many older adults in the world around us not contributing, but mostly just living for ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
and collecting Social Security and things like that, and adding to our store of wealth.
Yeah.
And they don't see us as being people who are willing and capable of contributing to helping to make their world a better world.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so important about conscious eldering, is a commitment to living not just for ourselves, but like you mentioned, for future generations. And the only way we're going to change a lot of these stereotypes that separate the generations is when we serve as the kind of elders that younger people in their hearts want to see. They want to see us making a difference, caring about their world, not just only focused on our own pleasure and how many rounds of golf we can do every week. Even though it's fine to golf, I'm not putting that down, but they got to see us as caring about them and their generation and the generations after, and that'll make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And I think what's paradoxical in there is, like, that's what actually engenders respect.
Yes.
And that's what the elders want more than anything, I find, from the youngers, is respect.
Yeah. But we have to earn it.
Yeah.
Just because you got a bunch of gray hair and wrinkles doesn't mean that they're going to think, oh, wise elder, I want to kneel at your feet.
Yeah. Or how many rounds of golf, or how many presents from Amazon under the Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, Ron, I'm really thrilled to introduce my audience to your work, to your book. And again, Ron's book is Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. And your retreats that I really do want to send my mom. I'm going to try to get
Want
her.
me to hold up my book so you're...
Oh, yeah. There we go.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and so the website is centerforconsciouseldering.com, and from there you guys can find all about the retreat I want to send my mom on for her 80th birthday, and Ron's Facebook group as well. So yeah, thanks so much, Ron, for your work, and as my community comes up with questions for you, I'll pass them through, and maybe we'll get together again with a few more people on the line.
Oh, I would like that. I think that'd be great. Thank you for inviting me, Kate. It's been a pleasure. And good luck with your work. It was nice hearing a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, there's so much overlap. It's great. And definitely, it seems like there's always methods behind the madness.